This is a special weekend presentation of the Best of Bob Grant. Highlights of Bob's weekday afternoon program recorded for broadcast at this time.
WABC, New York.
You know, every time I turn around, somebody from the automobile industry, whether it's Roger Smith of General Motors or whether it's an official of the Chrysler Corporation or an official of the Ford Motor Car Company, somebody is always telling us we're going to have an electric car. But it never comes. It never happens. In 1980, General Motors said we would have an electric car on the road by 1984. 1984 came and went and no electric car. And now we're told by Roger Smith there will be an electric car. General Motors is going to put it out. But we don't know for sure what it's going to be, when it's going to be. We're being had. This is a phony. This is a phony. Ladies and gentlemen, the fact of the matter is we are in the clutches of the fossil fuel industry. The oil industry will not let us go to any other means of energy until they are sure every last single drop has been drained from Mother Earth. Does it sound paranoid for me to say that? Does it sound extreme? Yes, it may sound that way, but ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely believe it. And if I did not believe it, and if the past 20 years did not indicate that that belief was justified, I would not say what I'm saying now. But it is so important. You may think with all the other matters concerning us, why would I begin the program by talking about this? I do so for two basic reasons. Number one, the recent report on how inflation has gone to an 8.5% for the first quarter of the year, on top of the inflationary cycle that we've been involved with for so long, ever since the first oil price crunch in 1973-74. I tell you, this is why the inflation goes on and on and on, because we keep spending more for energy, using more. And the impact is felt in many, many ways. They closed 42nd Street today, creating a lot of problems for a lot of people. They close it symbolically to rid the highways and byways in the tri-state area of the automobile. They don't want to build a more fuel-efficient car. The Gabones out there helped the automobile industry defeat high mileage, low emission automobiles. And all we keep hearing about is what we're going to have in the future, what we're going to have in the future. The future could be, the future should be here now. The future should have been with us in the 1980s. But you people, you have not learned to organize, and I can't blame you, because there's nobody to organize behind, is there? We have an occasional Ralph Nader every now and then, but Ralph, who doesn't drive an automobile in the city of Washington, D.C., is probably not too concerned with all of this. At any rate, New York's waters are cleaner, but pollution is still daunting us. And what is the quality of life? How do you determine the quality of life? Do you determine it by the air you breathe, the water you drink, the clothes you wear, the car you drive, the house you live in? Or is it something more pervasive, something less tangible, something more profound? Is it how you feel about yourself, how you feel about your neighborhood, how you feel about your city, how you feel about your nation? Are you proud of your nation today, on this 19th day of April, 1990? Are you proud of it? We're getting ready to pay thanks to some international thugs, some murderers, some kidnappers. We call them Shiite terrorists. They're nothing more than the worst kind of brigands, the worst kind of thugs. They may release an American hostage. Quote, and all the newscasters fall in lockstep with this, quote, as a sign of goodwill. Goodwill for what? If they really want goodwill, they would release all 8 American hostages and the others held who are citizens of the United Kingdom, Italy, and West Germany and Belgium. They would release all of them, and they would apologize profusely to the families and the nations, and they would pay damages. But no, they say they may release a hostage, and immediately people say, well, they're not so bad. Will we ever learn? I doubt it. I doubt it. Let's get to our busy telephone lines right now. Go to the first caller, who should be Nick on the New Jersey line. Are you there, Nick?
Hello, Mr. Grant.
Yes,
You
Nick.
began your show this afternoon by saying that the Gavones kept us from having more fuel-efficient and less polluting cars.
Yeah, the Capones, in cooperation with the automobile companies. Don't forget I said that.
Okay, but the real responsibility...
They had to have help from the automobile companies, you know.
The real responsibility for this should go to Ronald Wilson Reagan, because Jimmy Carter passed a bill that put heavy fines on car
First of all,
companies.
Jimmy Carter did not pass a bill. Congress passed a bill.
Jimmy Carter, okay, sorry.
Congress passed a bill.
Jimmy
and
Carter initiated it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Congress passed a bill, and the fines are still there. The only difference is that the fuel allotment for the fleet average was lessened by the Reagan administration. I'm glad to see that the Bush administration has gone back to a higher standard, a higher MPG.
Not one company ever paid $1 in fine because Ronald Reagan overrode the fines. Not one penny was ever paid. Chrysler retooled and produced a much better
Yeah, I
car.
agree with you. Hey, look, pal, if you think we're going to get in an argument over that, you're sadly mistaken, and
Okay,
you're
one
going to be
other
disappointed. You're going to be disappointed. However, I want to point this out. In a report by a major automobile publication, it said that when they were offering high MPG automobiles, that people were opting for the bigger cars, as they called them, the gas guzzler cars.
Well, as you know, America...
So don't tell me that the Camones had nothing to do with it. They cooperated in their own screwing.
Well, the Japanese car companies are building a more fuel-efficient car, and that's where all our dollars are going to
Well,
Japan.
now, wait a
We
minute.
had
Wait a
built
minute.
more
Hold it.
fuel-efficient car in this country.
Hold it. The Japanese do build a more efficient fuel car, but they also build luxury cars, and the luxury cars are outselling the efficient cars.
While we're on the topic, Reagan is also responsible for cutting back any low-interest loans for solar energy and the tax rebates you would get by putting solar technology into your house.
Well, look, he's gone. He's no longer president. Now, if you want to sit around and talk about his presidency, we'll do a program on that. But right now, we're trying to talk about where we go from here.
Well, we have to know...
You obviously were in a small minority of people who didn't vote for the guy, and you never got over that. Paul, you're on WABC. Hello.
Hello, Paul. I mean, excuse me, Mr. Grant.
I don't know why people do that. I'm sick and tired of people doing that. I call them by their right name, and they call me by their name. So cut it out!
Well, I'm not used to this talking.
Well, then don't call.
I really like to talk to you, if I may.
All right.
You hit the topic that's been bothering me today about cars and low efficiency, etc. Aren't there laws on the books about auto emissions, and aren't they supposed to be tested? And that's how you get your sticker on the car that you've passed the test and things like that.
Well, we're not talking about emissions, but that's true. But we're not talking about emissions. We're talking about fuel efficiency. We're talking about MPG. We're talking about mileage. We're talking about conservation.
Is the general topic that you mentioned before about quality of life and whether air pollution? So I think I'm trying to stay with what you had mentioned, open up your program with, and that Mr. Smith had promised us an electric car in '84. It hasn't materialized. And I agree with you. It's just these...
Oh, he's a lot of hot air, Roger Smith.
Right on.
He's a lot of hot air.
But,
he's a big windbag like all the rest of those skunks from Detroit.
Don't you think the automobile owner has a responsibility for keeping his car, clean and not polluting? I mean, I've asked some of my neighbors. I don't own a car, but I do rent. And one of my neighbors says, "Well, don't you know people disconnect those catalyst things?" And I was shocked to hear that. But as I said, I don't own a car. But isn't that really the major problem of pollution? Is auto emissions?
It is a major problem. It certainly is one of the big reasons that the air quality in the New York area, heretofore not considered too bad, in the past decade has become second only to Los Angeles in poorness of quality. Yeah.
And in my neighborhood, which has changed around the last 15 years, Park Slope, Brooklyn, we had to install lights on the corner, and as we wait with all these double parked cars and the fumes and everything, it's so obvious, and that when you mention to a car owner, like, you're crazy. Why do you ask me to clean the air? Well, everyone's got an individual responsibility. I'm conservative enough to realize that if you're going to make a change, it's the individual that's going to have to do it. I don't expect General Motors to give me an electric car, not for the next 10, 20, 30 years, unless they have to, like you said, until the last drop of oil is out of the ground.
Well, that's for sure. People seem to understand that. The general public, people who call the Bob Grant program, we disagree on many things. And Yet there's one thing that most of us seem to agree on, and that is we are aware of the fact that the oil company is composed of a bunch of selfish, no-good thugs who really don't care about this country. And we have congressmen and the past administration which played footsie with them. And
I voted for him, and I agree with what you just got through saying.
Okay. You see, the fleet average was supposed to go up. When they talk about fleet average, what they mean is MPG.
Yes, I understand.
But the Reagan administration allowed it to drop, actually.
Yes.
I interviewed Carl Sagan, who, although I have political disagreements with the man, when it comes to his scientific expertise, he has few peers. He said there is no reason, absolutely no reason, we can't be driving automobiles that get 60 miles to the gallon. There are some who say 100, but let's be even more conservative. Let's say 50. Why don't we get automobiles that are 50 miles to the gallon? Why not?
Did you hear about the car company in California that will deliver an electric car in 4 weeks? They will do 60 miles.
Yeah, but what happens to those automobiles? They disappear.
The Japanese have been buying these high technology, and 10 years from now, when we haven't got any more oil and our pollution is bad, they will sell us back the technology and we'll become the colony of Japan. I
don't know why we just don't become a franchisee of Japan. Why we don't just become a franchisee of Japan. Japan should franchise most of the world. The only part of the world they couldn't franchise would be, believe it or not, West Germany.
Yes, because they're better at it than they are.
That's right. Good. Isn't that interesting? Germany and Japan, the two economic giants of 1990. I could have sworn they lost World War II. I'll have to look up my history.
Let me ask you a question, Bob.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused at times on this, but don't both of these countries offer low-interest loans, and they get an industrial group together and have an industrial policy, and they produce products that are, coming down the road with new innovations, and 10 years down, they have all the new ideas. And yet when we talk about that, that's supposed to be anti-capitalistic. It's government control.
Well,
how do the Germans do it without getting this feeling?
Well, they don't have the antitrust laws that we have, for one thing. There's no such thing as payola over there. They do business by openly paying. I don't know if you want to do that.
What about that Lockheed thing that fell the government of Japan about 2 sessions back?
Well, that was a little different. That was with the government. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about lobbyists doing business with a company and saying, we want to give you a present. See, we can't do that. We can't do that because American law forbids that. And I'm not saying that American law is wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm just pointing out that there are differences.
Maybe we should ask them to adopt our laws. I mean, there is a certain
we can't do that.
About that.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
David on WABC. This is Bob Grant. I shouldn't call him by name. He's going to call me that. So.
No. Good afternoon, Bob.
Yes, David.
Yesterday, I had the pleasure of talking with Chief Burke, the police chief of Teaneck.
Yes, David.
And I told him that I'm in full agreement with what he did and what Officer Spat did. I can appreciate his difficult position.
Yes.
And that, he needs to hear from somebody who has a clear head, because all they've been hearing from have been the hate mongers, the stormtroopers. And I felt it necessary, for them to know that there is still a good majority of us out there who are not kissing the feet of the criminal. And I would just like to say to all of those out there who are calling for Officer Spat's head, put yourself in his position. You get a report that a kid is standing on a corner brandishing a gun. It's either his life or yours, especially if the kid is running away. What are you going to do? I mean, when are we going to stop coddling these maniacs? And when are we going to get away from our preoccupation with race?
Well, in answer to you, especially the last question, I don't think we ever will get over the preoccupation with race. I don't see any end to it, because there are too many people who are... First of all, to accomplish anything, you have to get rid of fear. And when fear paralyzes effort, then, of course, there's no chance, not any chance at all, that you're going to achieve anything. And since people are so afraid of being called racist, since people are so afraid of addressing the issue as you have addressed it, nothing will happen. That's why I do not believe in certainly our lifetime, David, we will see any change. If anything, it's going to get worse. Every time they allow a special prosecutor to take the reins of the regular prosecutor, this is a signal. This is a signal to the Sharptons, Masons, Maddoxes, Daughtries, and the rest of the troublemakers that they can make more mischief elsewhere.
And I would just like to say that if any of the Spat family is listening, you have my prayers, you have my sympathy, and I want you to know that black people didn't tear up your town. Subhuman animals tore up your town.
Very good, David. Thank you. On WABC, Bob Grant saying hello, this time to John. Hello, John. John, this is Bob Grant. Hello.
Bob.
Yes.
I had your prologue on the beginning of the program about fuel is right on. This is the year 1990. In 1900, the U.S. Department of Agriculture had a program, Fuel from the Farm. The transition of farm machinery from that powered the threshers and the milling machines to the tractors went from steam to alcohol and kerosene.
Right.
Alcohol primarily.
Right.
This is 90 years ago.
That's right.
Just imagine had they worked on that technology from that day on, where would we be today?
Well, that's an intriguing but rather frustrating thing to contemplate. I want to say this, though, John. We do have the technology right now, and there are some companies in the Middle West that have gone ahead with an ethanol program.
Right.
But the fossil fuel industry is so powerful.
It strangles them.
That's right. What they have done is they weren't able to kill the infant, so they stunt its growth, and it remains an infant today and always will be, at least until every drop of fossil fuel is gone from the face of the earth.
Bob, India uses the cow dung for methane gas for cooking the food, and they must have hundreds of thousands of them. So some of our stockyards in this country are using that technology. But I'm trying to bring out is that John D. Rockefeller went to the Department of Agriculture, I think it was 1906, and said the fledgling oil industry needs a boost, and we have to find a product, a use for our product, the gasoline, and they abandoned the entire farm program.
Well, in those days, it was easy to see how that
it could help.
That would be a very seductive suggestion.
A new industry, help them
New
out.
Industry. We had plenty of oil. The fields of West Texas alone supplied more than enough oil to meet the needs of a growing country.
And Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, that's right. Pennsylvania, by the way.
Backyard, right in our own backyard.
Well, in your backyard was the finest quality of oil in the entire nation, you know.
And you know what burns my rear end more than anything else in the world? Hitler run his war machine on synthetic and alcohol and all other fuel derivatives that could be had, and this technology was captured by the Allies, and it was forgotten, haunted, and hid. So we could have no use for it. They claimed it was not cost effective. At $30 a barrel, anything was cost effective.
All right, let me tell you something that very few people know. And I'm going to say this right here on WABC Radio.
You and I know
50,000 watts without fear of any legal repercussions. Ladies and gentlemen, I say this because I know it to be true. In a plant in Texas, the Exxon company had a pilot project converting gas into converting coal into gas.
That's what the Germans
The liquefaction plant.
That's what the Germans did.
In Bayville, Texas. You know what? It was working so well, they dismantled it.
Exactly.
They dismantled it.
And everybody talks about sulfur coal and everything else, and you could build a liquefaction plant right on the coal fields.
All right, you understand, you understand, John, and I thank you very much. Bob Grant talking here on WABC to Al. Hello, Al.
Yeah, hello, Bob. I was just going to reinforce this conversation with a similar thought about alcohol production. Excuse me. The technology for alcohol production has been the same today as it was 200 years ago. It's a simple fermentation of a wheat or a grain or a sugar, and then you simply distill off the alcohol. The biomass that we have in this country is enough to feed every car in this nation for the next 1,000 years.
You know, I'm
Just
impressed.
about the fuel.
I'm impressed with you, Al, and with the other callers because every single one of you seems to know more than the politicians down in Washington. Or is it that they know as much as you do, except you guys aren't getting paid off by the oil industry?
You know, these petroleum racketeers.
May I borrow that phrase?
Go ahead, it's yours.
PRs, petroleum racketeers.
Right. These petroleum racketeers know that if they apply this technology, it's so simple that it would put them out of business because the whole chemical industry is based on their petroleum racketeering. See?
You know, Al, why is it that you understand it so well and you put it so simply, but yet so powerfully?
Yeah?
Why is it you understand it, but so few other people do? Why?
I don't know, Bob. It's hard to make people understand sometimes. You know, the truth is the most stubborn thing in the face of the earth, and it is often sometimes stranger than fiction. That's why.
Yeah.
You know, can I say one more thing, Bob?
Sure.
Not only is the fuel industry easy to accomplish our ends by using the biomass, because you know when you drill for oil, you have to get down 20 miles sometimes. But the biomass is right here on the surface. We have it right here. Another thing, as far as
well, speaking of biomass, let me tell you.
Yeah.
The waste from unused cane in the cane sugar fields in Hawaii alone could fuel the automobiles of Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Montana for a year.
Exactly. Not only that, but the alcohol is a very clean fuel. It burns like natural gas. There's no smoke, no fumes, nothing.
No.
And another thing, Bob, we can also use castor oil for a lubricant, which is one of the best lubricants in the world. We don't have to use petroleum. Castor oil plants grow beautifully right here in my backyard in the Bronx. I got beautiful seeds. Yeah. I squeeze the oil out. And I got a beautiful oil just by squeezing it naturally.
With no waste, no waste, clean. You would have clean air.
Clean air,
right? And
it's a lubrication.
Well,
you can use it for motor oil.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Thank you for the call, Al.
Okay, Bob.
Most edifying. I'm very impressed with the gentlemen who've been calling thus far. Hello, John. Okay.
I'd like to speak to you about the problems that our police are having today due to these sensitivity pressures that they're put under by these social engineers.
Yes.
You know, they're afraid to use their weapons in a legitimately dangerous situation, much less a questionable one. That's why we have so many more police being shot down today. You know, the police have to go to these sensitivity classes so they can better understand why thugs point guns at their head. And, you know, Bob, we're now at a point in this country where we might as well retire every white police officer and make him an extinct species, because every time a white police officer has to use his weapon against a member of a group that I don't think too many people argue about committing most violent crimes, he's now reduced to having to find a place to hide out to protect himself from these Afro-Nazis. And every time there's trouble in the black community, some spokesman comes along and blames it on some outside agitators, as though there's this group of professional haranguers on standby, ready to load up into minivans and head out to the nearest trouble spot. You know, I think this is just a continuation, Bob, of this insane policy that we've adopted in this country in the last few years of blaming everyone and everything rather than one or a group of people of your own. And about Teaneck, you know, to those warriors that were out there supposedly expressing their sympathy for that the teen that was shot, some way of expressing it. They go out and destroy innocent people's stores and grab things for themselves. And since it's been pretty well established that that teen did have some kind of weapon, my sympathies will have to be with the police until I know all the facts.
Now back to the best of Bob Grant from WABC Radio.
Mike, this is Bob Grant. You're on WABC, Mike.
Hello, Bob.
Yeah.
Talking about this Earth Day business, the public, I think, should be trained to stop dumping on each other. I worked in a sewer department for 30 years, and we cleaned these catch basins on the corners of all these city streets. And the public just keeps dumping their garbage into these catch basins. old paint cans, oil when they changed the oil from their cars, hedges. I had one gent throw grass cuttings and hedges down there, and I complained to him, and he says, can you figure a better way of getting it cleaned up? He says, I dump it and you clean it. This is what's going on. They talk about Earth Day. Well, I think they ought to stop dumping into these catch basins. I'm retired now, but they're still doing it. You go into the business areas, foodstuffs are dumped down there, which cause methane gas. Now we go into the methane gas business. They got gas right under the city streets if they wanted to tap it and run the vehicles. Methane gas in the city sewers. And that's what I got to say, Bob, toward Earth Day and the gas.
Okay.
All right, Bob.
All right, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you. Eddie, this is Bob Grant. You're on WABC. Hello.
Mr. Grant, for quite a while I was very ambivalent on the legalization of drugs. Then I saw the Channel 13 program with the very erudite William Buckley Jr.
Yes?
And he was such a disappointment. Here's a guy with the rhetorical and persuasive tools to get you to shoot your mother. Sounded like a high school kid in a debate. He had no argument whatsoever for the legalization of drugs. And if you knew what they concluded between the two of them, they said the one was the most ineluctable job in the world is to eliminate poverty, and number two was education, which I still don't know what it means. I think every 10-year-old kid out there knows that drugs are bad for you, and...
No, they don't.
Really?
They don't.
Well,
They don't... have you ever been a parent?
I'm a parent, sure.
Well, how old is your youngster?
Well, I'm a tired old man.
Okay, all right. In other words...
my youngest one is
all right.
25.
The fact of the matter is, if you can recall, kids always don't believe you. They think they know better, no matter what it is, whether it's telling them about smoking cigarettes, staying out late at night, drinking, drugs. They think they know better. They always know better than their parents. They're smarter because they've been here less. They've been here for a shorter period of time. They haven't had time for the air to soften their brain. That's what they think.
You will agree that the poverty angle is ridiculous.
No, poverty has nothing to do with it.
I agree with that.
If poverty were the sole basis for the use of drugs, then there would never be any person of wealth hooked on drugs, and there have been plenty. The only difference is that people with wealth don't rob and steal to get their habit taken care of. Until they run out of money, that is. On WABC, Bob Grant saying hello to Keith. Hello, Keith. On WABC, that jerk never gets tired. He never will. But someday he'll croak. Trouble is, when I read the death notices, I won't know that I'm reading his. Unless somebody shoves the harmonica down his dumb throat. Richard, hello.
Yes, sir, Mr. Grant. When you were talking to, whatever his name was, David, I think, and he mentioned people preoccupied with color, and you said, yes, those people, I almost fell out of my chair. To hear you say a thing like that.
Okay, I'm glad you fell out of your chair. I hope you didn't get hurt. Hope you only fell on your tailbone and became a quadriplegic. Let's say hello to Ed. Ed, hello.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Grant.
Yes, Ed.
I've been listening to you talk about the oil liquefaction, the power business, etc., etc. I've been in the power industry all my career, 35 years. I'm an engineer. The one thing you keep bringing, or you bring up, is the fact that about the electric car. One thing you got to remember, you can't make
I don't bring up the electric car. Roger Smith brought up the electric car.
Roger Smith. The one thing everybody seems to forget, or what I haven't been
hearing... What a bunch of dopes.
...is that it takes as much oil to make electricity as it does to run a car.
Well, then why bother with the electric car, pal?
Yes, sir. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem.
That's the basic problem. It's just not practical at the state of technology.
Well, then why does Roger Smith come out and say that? Why every few years does the American public get promised that we're going to have an electric car? Why do people like Carl Sagan and Ralph Nader say that we should develop an electric car?
Oh, they say we should. That's fine. That's all well and good. I agree with you.
Oh,
The state of technology...
you agree with me. Okay.
The state of technology we're in right now just doesn't permit it.
Well,
that's the problem.
I see. It's always good hearing from a scientist.
I'm not a scientist, sir. I'm an engineer.
An engineer. It's always good hearing from an engineer. Do you work in developing any product for a major company or even a minor company?
No, we work in building equipment for steam power plants right now. We're in a very sort of archaic type of industry.
I see. Where did you get your engineering degree?
Brooklyn Polytechnic.
That's all right. We won't hold it against you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I'm glad.
My husband Frank and I just got back from Atlantic City, and have I got a tip for you. You've got to go to the Claridge. The Claridge Casino Hotel. I know it's not as big and glitzy as some of the other places in Atlantic City, but that's the point. Because the Claridge is smaller, it's friendlier. It has a different kind of class and charm. At the big hotels, they don't know you from a hole in the wall, and you can feel that. Well, the Claridge is different. Everyone from the guys who park your car to the bellhops to Willie the maitre d' at Martino's restaurant, they are really nice. And I'm telling you the way it is. The Claridge is a friendly place, whether you're a big spender or not, no matter what kind of action you go for. At the Claridge, they go out of their way to make you happy. I guess that's why they've got great things to do and friendly people, and why they've got me and my husband Frank coming back.
The Claridge Casino Hotel, because smaller is friendlier.
The world is going through turbulent times. The winds of change are everywhere. Conditions that prevailed yesterday will alter today and be different tomorrow. Some for the better, some not. And for many Americans, there's a sense of loss of that golden era when the basic values in life remain steady, day after day, year after year. Respect, caring, pride. When American industry produced a superior product or service that you took for granted. The customers of Boston Post Lumber in the Bronx know what I'm talking about. Day after day, year after year, they receive quality lumber and construction supplies, budget priced right on the money, and service the way it was in that golden era. So if you're a Donald Trump, a suburban builder, or a do-it-yourselfer with a taste for the better life, call Alex, Sam, John, or Jerry. Boston Post Lumber at 2750 Boston Road in the Bronx. Call 212-547-7800, 212-547-7800.
E-I-E-I-O. People sure are talking about Charlie Brown's Farmers Market Salad Bar.
E-I-E-I-O, that's a fresh salad.
They're raving about the selection, the taste.
E-I-E-I-O.
Farm Fresh. That's Charlie Brown's Farmers Market Salad Bar. It's so packed with delicious things to eat, it makes for a light, delicious lunch all by itself. And it's included free with every dinner entree. Plus, you can go back as many times as you want.
E-I-E-I-O, delicious.
People just love it because it's fresh, and they love it because it's got everything a salad bar ought to, from farm fresh vegetables to a variety of specialty salads.
E-I-E-I-O.
Farmers Market Salad Bar at Charlie Brown's. It's as close to the farm as you can get without growing it yourself.
Charlie Brown's. We're good food and good friends. Go hand in hand. Charlie Brown's. We're good food and good friends. Go hand in hand.
This is Glenn Close. Last year, 10% of all African elephants were killed. This magnificent creature could be close to extinction within a decade. Imagine that one day your child looks in a picture book and asks, "What's this animal? Is it real?" Imagine that your answer is, "That's the African elephant. Once there were hundreds of thousands of elephants in Africa, but now they're gone." This is what will happen unless we use our imaginations, our intelligence, and our hearts now. To help, call Wildlife Conservation International, a division of the New York Zoological Society. WCI is an organization of concerned scientists working around the world to make our planet safe for the African elephant and other endangered animals. Call 1-800-221-3333, 1-800-221-3333. Our children deserve to inherit a world rich in life and diversity, not just a storybook filled with memories.
Good morning. It's a Saturday, 21st of April. We have 55 degrees and cloudy skies, rain in the forecast today, and then clearing tomorrow. Here's how things go. Periods of rain today, possibly even a thunderstorm. The highs will be in the middle 60s. Wind southwest around 10 miles an hour, becoming northwest 10 to 15 miles an hour later in the day. For tonight, it'll start out partly cloudy, then becoming mostly clear overnight toward morning. Lows will be in the middle 40s. For Sunday, it'll be sunny and pleasant for Earth Day. That's appropriate. Highs in the mid-60s. And the outlook for Monday, sunny and mild again, highs up near 70. Right now it's cloudy, barometer 30.05 and falling, wind southwest at 5, dew point 48, humidity 77%, and the temperature is 55 degrees. So we'll have rain today, not all day, but keep the umbrella handy. That's our forecast. I'm Bruce Anderson. Back to Bob Grant.
Now, once again, back to Bob Grant from WABC.
Bill, this is Bob Grant. You're on WABC.
Hi, Bob. Bob, I'm listening to your callers and you talking about the environment, and I just have to make an observation. I run about 40 or 50 miles a week, and I do a lot of traveling. And when you run along the roads, you just can't believe the amount of garbage and junk that people dump. You know, we're a nation of pigs, and I think it's part of the problem. People don't take cleaning up the environment seriously because we just have the most incredible mentality towards throwing garbage and bottles, and you just wouldn't believe the stuff that you see all over the roads. It's just, I think it's endemic to this country. We're pigs.
You know something? You are so right. And I'd like to be able to say that it's limited only to the New York, New Jersey area, but you know something? It's not. I'm sorry to tell you that I have found it everywhere I have gone. I recall visiting a place called Papago Park in Phoenix, Arizona, and being shocked at the debris thrown into a pond there. And a ranger, told me that at one time it had been a beautiful place, pristine, devoid of this clutter, but he didn't know how to stop it. That picnickers, people, no matter what they looked like, even those who were dressed neatly and seemed to be clean, they left debris. Somehow or other, people have no regard. They have no regard for their own land. Whether they're the same way in their own home or not is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is they are polluting this once great nation.
It's the same, Bob.
Thank you, Bill.
Good talking to you.
Jim on WABC is not there because he didn't wait on the line, so let's move over to Steve. Hello, Steve.
Good afternoon, Bob. I wanted to talk about the recent death of the Ryan boy from AIDS. What I really want to vent some spleen, and I don't know if you'll agree with me or not, about the connection that Elton John had with the last days of this boy and also his funeral.
By the way, what kind of silly, stupid hat was that jerk wearing? That sick jerk that we indulged that creep with the what kind of hat was that supposed to be? At first, I thought that Pandit Nehru's grandson had come to the wedding from India. Then I thought it was some woman who looked somewhat mannish. Then I thought it was somebody that didn't know what to do with his purse, and so he put it on his head. What was that hair? What was that thing on that jerk's head?
All I know is when I saw him on the news at that funeral, it made me sick.
And let me ask you this: it is customary in Christian churches for men to remove their hats. Did you notice not one person had a hat on except two? Those who are above all laws, man's or God's. One, Michael Jackson, the fellow who began life as a black boy and has now become a voluptuous white woman, and this creep, Elton John. The two of them kept their hats on. Would somebody please explain why the minister didn't tell them to take their hats off?
Well, they have certain, I wouldn't say protective coloration, but perhaps protective philosophies, or whatever you want to call them.
No, they're supposed to be rock stars. That makes them better than anybody. They're royalty, see? They're stars. They're not human beings anymore. They're stars.
I very much resented the fact it was such a tragedy what happened to this boy who was so innocent of anything that should have caused this disease to come to him. And
you want to hang on, Steve? I'll be happy to talk to you the other side of the news.
Thank you.
You make the most of life. You make the best of life. You take the ups and downs, the smiles and frowns, the good news with the bad. And when you need to know, there's just one place to go. WABC, New York.
It's 9 o'clock.
From ABC News, I'm Bob Walker. The question remains, what is going on in the Middle East regarding the release or non-release of an American hostage this weekend? The White House is downplaying the whole event, saying we've been down this road before. A former hostage, Moorhead Kennedy, said these delays are playing into Iran's hands.
I think they want as much publicity out of this as possible, and they're handling that with consummate skill.
If a hostage is to be released, it will probably be in the Syrian capital of Damascus. ABC's Gordon Robinson is there, and we ask him what he hears this morning.
There are reports this morning that the Syrians are trying to arrange a compromise whereby Washington will send Ambassador Kelly to Syria, but only after the release of the hostage. There are also reports from Tehran that an influential newspaper there has published a call for the release of all foreign hostages held in Lebanon.
If a hostage is released, it will probably be either Robert Polhill, Alan Steen, or Jesse Turner, the three academics seized in January of 1986 by terrorists who were posing as Beirut policemen. I'll have more news after this.
The further away from 25 I get, it seems the more little aches and pains I get. A friend told me I should try therapeutic mineral ice with soothing deep cold pain relief. I said, mineral ice? Oh, right, therapeutic mineral ice. Well, I tried it. What a relief. It's penetrating relief, a wonderfully cool, soothing feeling of relief. The name may be tough to remember, but that relief is well worth it. Try the cool, the soothing relief of therapeutic mineral ice pain relieving gel.
Use only as directed.
0% financing at Sears. Right now through April 28th, there's no billing, no payments, and no finance charges until July on qualified Sears charge purchases over $200. See store for details. Take advantage of 0% financing and a wide selection of appliances, electronics, and home fashion purchases. You'll find hundreds of brand names to choose from. 0% financing right now at Sears, where you always get your money's worth and a whole lot more.
President Bush is spending some time relaxing today in the Florida Keys, but he is going to be in touch with the world. ABC's Lark McCarthy has the story.
President Bush had planned to concentrate on bone fishing this weekend in Isla Mirada, Florida. But now he's considering the U.S. response to the Soviet crackdown in Lithuania. Mr. Bush says a lot of consultation is going on right now. After talking to the allies, he'll talk to members of Congress next week. The White House spokesman indicates a decision will be made quickly after that.
The president of Lithuania says his country would consider a moratorium on full independence if that would get negotiations on with the Kremlin. But Vytautas Landsbergis told the New York Times Lithuania would not ever revert to being governed by the Soviet Constitution. Countdown for the shuttle Discovery's Tuesday morning launch is to begin this afternoon at Florida's Kennedy Space Center. The Discovery is carrying the $1.5 billion Hubble Space Telescope on a mission long awaited by astronomers around the world. Fire burned through the upper floor of a 5-story hotel in Las Vegas before dawn this morning. About 150 guests of the Las Vegas Inn were evacuated. A few were treated for smoke inhalation, but no serious injuries were reported. Officials say early warnings alerted the guests and allowed them to evacuate the hotel. The Greyhound Company says a reduced workload caused by the 7-week-long strike by its drivers has forced it to lay off about a fifth of its maintenance force. Union leader Fred Ranchler in San Francisco said that is a sign the company is really struggling.
We're willing to stay out as long as it takes. Right now, we're willing to stay out until he goes into bankruptcy and then deal with a new owner.
There have been no talks between Greyhound and the bus drivers since the middle of March. Greyhound says there will be no talks until 7 consecutive days has passed without any violence. The latest shooting of a bus took place on Wednesday. A convicted murderer was put to death by lethal injection this morning at the state prison in Huntsville, Texas. 54-year-old Jerome Butler, who has spent nearly half his life in jail, refused to appeal his death sentence, saying, "I just want to get it over with." In June of 1986, Butler shot a Houston cab driver 3 times in the back of the head and robbed him of about $300. This is ABC News.
Hi, I'm Bob Vila. Quality home paints don't have to cost a fortune, not when you shop at Sears.
And right now, during Sears Spring National Paint Sale, we've reduced the price on Weather Beater flat exterior paint to only $11.96 a gallon. And Easy Living flat interior paint is reduced to $9.94. So get a head start on your spring painting projects at Sears. But hurry, quantities are limited. Prices may vary in Alaska and Hawaii.
Get to Sears and get your money's worth and a whole lot more.
For the ABC Information Network, I'm Bob Walker.
Good morning. It's 9:05, 54 degrees, cloudy skies. Cops had a shootout with a man in Upper Manhattan this morning. The gunman was killed. Cops were not hurt. About 50,000 Haitians and Africans marched in Lower Manhattan yesterday to protest the federal government ban on Haitians donating blood. The demonstration apparently had some impact. An AIDS advisory committee in Washington recommended late yesterday the policy be modified to allow blood donations from those medically screened. The Transit Authority says crime is up 25% on the subways, according to statistics from February.
Earth Day! I loathe Earth Day! I despise and abominate Earth Day! I hate Earth Day! And I don't care if they hate me.
And let's be heard. Hello, everyone. Bob Grant with you in a special program. As you heard the modified song saying, I hate Earth Day, it reflects my feeling. Nevertheless, I am doing this hour production in order to have you make up your own minds about Earth Day and about, more importantly than Earth Day, of course, which is only 20 years old, this Earth, this universe we live in. The universe has survived Earth 15 billion years at least. And the question is, why are people wringing their hands saying suddenly it's all going to disappear? But it is Earth Day, and we do have a very distinguished scientist with us. He is Carl Sagan, the David Duncan Professor of Astronomy and Space Sciences and Director of the Laboratory for Planetary Studies at Cornell University. He's played a leading role in the Mariner and Viking Voyager expeditions to the planets. And for the following achievements, he has received the NASA Medal for Exceptional Scientific Achievement, the Prix Galibier, the International Astronautics Prize, and the NASA Medal for Distinguished Public Service twice. And we have Carl Sagan on the line with us right now, and in just a few moments we're going to go public and you can talk directly to him. And right now let's welcome Carl Sagan to the broadcast. Earth Day is, I believe, 20 years old. Were you a proponent of Earth Day from the beginning, and are you now, Carl Sagan?
Well, I certainly don't oppose it. I think it's very good in terms of raising consciousness about the quite serious and urgent environmental issues that we face. But what I'm worried about is that, it's like there's a danger of people only being friendly and peaceful around Christmas time, that there's a danger of people only being environmentally responsible around the time of Earth Day. But apart from that, I'm strongly for it.
Dr. Sagan, as a scientist, you should be aware more than most other people that ever since science first reared its head, there have been disagreements. There were people who disagreed with, I suppose, Isaac Newton. I mean...
Oh, lots.
We can find history replete with, of course, Galileo, one of the most famous cases of all. But what I'm driving at is, why should this era, in 1990, be any different than any other era, where you have people on one side saying, beware global warming, and people on the other saying we don't have anything to fear from global warming?
Well, I'm going to have to take a few minutes to respond to that question.
Good.
First off, I don't think it's quite true that there are anything like equal number of people on both sides. Science is not determined democratically, and the cases you just mentioned indicate that one lonely scientist can be right and everybody else wrong. One of the nicest aspects of science is that there is a self-correcting machinery that's built into it, unlike lots of other areas of human activity, like economics or religion, or, except in rare occasions, politics, where the response to errors is usually to continue with the error. In science, the whole ethos is the constant assessment about whether the ideas match the data, and if not, the ideas change. Now, on global warming, I don't know of any scientist, not one, who says that there's nothing to worry about. The most conservative say it's not clear how fast and by what amount the Earth will be getting warmer, and that more research is needed.
The vast bulk of people who have worked on this problem, including the all 5 or 6 of the major computer models that model the Earth's climate, give numbers like several degree centigrade average increase in the Earth's temperature by the middle of the 21st century. And that has a set of consequences involving warming, drought, sea level rise, flooding coastal cities, famine, disease, that are extremely serious. Now, maybe those projections are wrong. We don't have perfect models. Maybe we forgot something. That means that there is just as much chance that it will be worse than are being said than that it will be better. So the fact that science is imperfect, which it certainly is no reason for reassurance. We don't know which direction the imperfection is in. So my general approach to this problem is, if there is a significant chance, but not definite, of a very serious problem, what do you do? The standard military advice is plan for the worst case. Not what the Russians are likely to do, but what the Russians are capable of. We've spent $10 trillion listening to that advice. The standard insurance advice is plan for the worst case. There may be only a tiny chance that your house is going to burn up, but you want to be covered in case it is. Well, here also, even if there's only a tiny chance that the global environmental changes are going to be as serious as is being projected, it is sensible, prudent, reasonable, and, by the way, conservative to take steps to ameliorate it.
We're talking with Carl Sagan, who was on the line with us. Carl Sagan, who is a professor of astronomy and space sciences and director of the Laboratory for Planetary Studies at Cornell University. Professor Sagan, let's look at it this way. Let's just ask what may seem like a very naive question.
Oh, sure.
And that is, what's so bad about a warming trend, if indeed there is a warming trend? What would be so awful if in the next century we did have a mean temperature increase of, say, 4 degrees?
Yeah, it doesn't sound so bad. What's 4 degrees? It's much less than the temperature difference between summer and winter. What do you got to worry about? And I can remember the ex-governor of the state of Washington, Dixie Lee Ray, saying that so the result will be that Alaska is like Palm Springs. What's so wrong with that? Well, the question is, but what is Palm Springs like? A global temperature increase of a few degrees corresponds to local temperature increases of significantly more than that. If you take a look at some of the projections, no question they are not gospel, of what these temperature increases mean. You see vast drought by the middle to the end of the next century, to such an extent that the American Midwest is converted into something approaching scrub desert. Now, since the American Midwest is the breadbasket not just of the United States but of the world, that's very serious. Now, you might say, well, all we have to do is just pick up and move American agriculture north by a few hundred kilometers, maybe into Canada, and that's all that we'll have to worry about. Well, that is difficult, that is expensive, that implies certain assumptions about the soil in those places which may not be valid. The Canadians may have other ideas, and it doesn't say a thing about lots of other nations that don't have the kind of fiscal resources that the United States does. At the very least, it would be hugely expensive. Now let's think about sea level rising, which is another consequence of a few degrees centigrade temperature increase. Many cities in the world and in the United States are on coastlines. A few meter rise in sea level, which is sort of at the high end of the probable range, means the inundation, the flooding of New York and San Francisco and dozens, maybe hundreds of cities worldwide. Now you can say, well, we'll just build dikes and levees, or we'll move the cities elsewhere. So with an infinite amount of money, you can deal with these problems. But we don't have an infinite amount of money. and only the rich nations could respond. Consider Bangladesh, which is already so close to sea level that even now there are disastrous floods. A 1 to 3 meter rise in sea level will displace tens of millions of people in Bangladesh. They will have nowhere to go. There's a new issue of environmental refugees, which will plague us if we don't do something about it. So this gives just a little sense of, so what's the big deal about a few degrees?
So then you would say those who are concerned with this aspect are not being hysterical, but are being sensible.
Prudent, cautious, just as prudent and cautious as all those military strategists for the last 40-some-odd years have constantly drummed into us the importance of recognizing the worst that is possible to happen and taking steps to prevent it. Nothing wild-eyed about concern about the global environment.
In just a moment or so, we are going to go public with you and share you with our audience here in the tri-state area, the New York area. And when we do, we'll, of course, focus on their questions. Then I have several that I'd like to pose myself. Not all of them having to do with this planet, but with so many of those other planets that you and your fellow scientists are interested in. But right now, this reminder, this is Bob Grant with our special program on this day, Earth Day. Does anybody know the gentleman who is responsible for Earth Day? What his name is? What state he's from? I wonder. I know Carl Sagan does, but I wonder how many of you listening know the answer to that question. Well, we'll give you that answer and many more in just a moment. And let's go public now and say, first of all, hello to Lydia. Lydia, thank you for calling and participating in our special program.
How are you? Well, I shouldn't say that, Bob. All right. How are you, Dr. Sagan?
Just fine, Lydia. Thank you.
I have been following your career a long time, I believe, from Brooklyn to Cornell and out to California. I'm a former member of CETA, your organization, and so I've done a lot of reading. I wanted to ask you some questions that have been troubling me. Is it true that in about 10,000 years ago there was an ice age and we were all covered with glaciers around this area, and the glaciers receded and they are where they are now?
Yeah, Chicago was under about a mile of ice.
A mile of ice,
about
Chicago.
15,000 years ago.
Uh-huh. And prior to that, is it true that geologists have discovered up in the northern Arctic regions under the ice that there are tropical foliage evidence of tropical foliage having been there at one time up in Greenland, which was called Greenland?
Plants and animals.
Right.
That's true, but
right.
that's
They were
millions
frozen
of years ago.
Into the ice, correct. Is back in the 70s, there was a lot of print media about a coming ice age. At the same time, the scientists at that time were also saying the opposite, that the polar caps were receding and the water levels of the ocean were rising. And
how to reconcile these two, you're asking?
Well, no, I'm not asking you how to reconcile
Well, why don't we let them reconcile that? That's an intriguing
that's a good
aspect.
idea. Okay, I'll go along with that.
The story seems to be something like this. There are naturally occurring climate changes on the Earth that humans have nothing to do with. I mean, that's quite clear from the fact that there were climate changes before there were humans on Earth. And big ice ages came and went when our technology was very feeble, before the invention of agriculture and the development of cities some 10 or 12,000 years ago. So it's very clear that there are things that are changing the climate that have nothing to do with our modern technology. If those changes were to continue unabated, it looks as if something like 10,000 years from now, we would plunge into another one of those ice ages. But the carbon dioxide from the burning of fossil fuels and other greenhouse gases that humans are producing are totally overwhelming, or will shortly do so, this natural variation. So it's as if there's a slow, long-term trend, on top of which are plunked humans who are able to make much quicker and much more dangerous variations.
Well, another question about that then. Isn't it possible that since there was a tropical age and then an ice age, would it be too assuming to consider that perhaps we're on our way to another tropical age first before we go into another ice age? Isn't this something...
Well, but I say you have to distinguish between the trends which occur from the tilt of the Earth's axis of rotation and slight changes in its orbit.
You mean the
about
wobble
the sun.
effect?
Those kind of things, which occur on a very slow time scale, and the changes produced by human activities, which occur in the blinking of an eyelash compared to geological time. So if we bear that distinction in mind, the natural processes don't make any significant change over 1 or 2 human lifetimes. But human activities, the stuff we're worried about these days, make a change, very significant change, over 1 or 2 human lifetimes.
Well, I can agree that we do have some effect, of course, our industrial age, but I know that in the United States we have been attempting to clean up a lot of our act, whereas in Europe they're still burning coal stoves to heat their homes.
Well, the United States is responsible for... the United States is the worst polluter on the planet in terms of the amount of greenhouse gases, chiefly carbon dioxide, that goes up into the air.
But hasn't that been improving over the last 15 years?
Absolutely not.
Pardon me?
Absolutely not.
No.
And the second worst offender is the Soviet Union, and the third offender, if you want to lump them all together, is the developing world, so it doesn't require high technology to produce this stuff. And then comes, I've forgotten the exact order, but it's something like China and then Western Europe.
So in other words, we'll speed ourselves up into a tropical age.
Well, you say tropical, which doesn't sound so bad, but think about drought and desert and flooding, which is more to the point, and then it sounds significantly.
Are you suggesting, Dr. Sagan, that we could be headed for that part of Africa, the Sahel, which is absolutely parched? Is that what you mean?
Well, the phrase I used was scrub desert, in which there's some vegetation, but in which agriculture is extremely difficult. Some of the projections, just 75 years into the future, something like that, predict that for the presently anticipated rate at which we're putting junk into the atmosphere.
Dr. Sagan, isn't it true that at one time in Israel there was an awful lot of desert area that had laid fallow and dry until the agricultural community there did a lot of irrigating, etc., and has sort of been reforesting and building back a garden spot there?
Sure, some of that has happened, but maybe more to the point is the fact that all of North Africa, including big parts of northern Sahara, were lush, watered, filled with plants and wild animals, rich in savannas, only some 6,000 years ago. And that has all turned into desert. That's the model we have to be worried about.
At 6,000 years ago, wasn't the angle or the degree of the polar cap in a different place at that time?
No.
Pardon me?
No, not significantly. 6,000 years ago is still after the last ice age.
Well, I was curious because I read somewhere that the polar cap wasn't at that time where it is now.
No.
Dr. Sagan, since there weren't any polluters, there weren't any companies spewing smoke into the air 6,000 years ago.
That's my point.
What did cause those lush areas to become scrubbed or parched?
Well, there are several schools of thought, one of which is that it has to do with overgrazing. with the human domestication of animals having gone too far. And there are doubtless natural factors working as well. But the main lesson to be drawn from this is that there is a delicate balance, that the kind of environment that we enjoy and depend upon is not guaranteed. We have to be very careful what we do. What's happening is that human numbers are increasing enormously, exponentially. And the power of our technology is likewise increasing enormously. Those two together means that we now have an enormous capability to affect, influence, change the atmosphere on which we depend. And that means we have to really know what the heck we're doing when we start messing around with the atmosphere.
I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean about the domestication of animals having perhaps created...
If you have huge herds of grazing animals, they will eat the vegetation.
Well, then maybe the nasty hunters should have killed a few.
A few grazing animals?
No.
What about the theory that we had volcanic eruptions which spewed ash into the air and that had an influence? Any validity to that?
Well, there's no question. My colleagues and I did some work on this in the middle 70s. There's no question that if you have a large volcanic explosion, it puts fine particles, largely droplets of sulfuric acid, up into the stratosphere. That makes the Earth a little brighter, reflects more sunlight into space, and so less sunlight gets to the Earth to warm it, and so the Earth cools. And a major volcanic explosion can cool the Earth by a few tenths of a degree to maybe 1 degree. And an important example of that seems to be the Tambora volcanic explosion in Indonesia in the year 1815, which the cooling from which seems to have produced enormous problems in agriculture and elsewhere. It was known, the next summer was known as the year without a summer.
All right, we're going to take a brief time out with Dr. Carl Sagan. We have Lydia on the line in just a few minutes. We're going to go to her, but right now, this time out. What have you done for us lately?
Well, thanks for those kind remarks, Bob. Lately, I've been working on the analysis of the data taken by the Voyager spacecraft in the outer part of the solar system. Just finishing a book on nuclear winter. My wife Andrienne and I are working on a number of projects, including an analysis of the abortion issue in Parade magazine, come out exactly on Earth Day. I'm teaching at Cornell, a bunch of other research, some of the things I'm doing.
Were you disappointed that Hubble didn't get into orbit last week?
Oh, after years of delay, a mere 2-week delay doesn't faze me at all.
Well, let's hope it's only a 2-week delay.
My fingers are crossed.
All right, let's get back to Lydia. Are you still there? Lydia?
Yes.
All right, one more question, Lydia, if you have it for Carl Sagan. Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to ask about this ozone hole. My understanding of what I've read is about that it's down in the south, over the South Pole. Mm-hmm. Now, there are no factories, there are no traffic, there's nobody heating their furnaces, their houses, or industries with coal and wood, and that is where the ozone hole appears. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Why aren't there any over New York or Soviet Union or or the rest of the cities that are
polluting the atmosphere? But your question, Lydia, suggests that
atmosphere.
you think that greenhouse warming has something to do with the ozone hole.
But it doesn't stay; it disappears.
The basic idea is something like this. There is an extremely thin layer of ozone that protects us from deadly solar ultraviolet radiation.
My understanding is that the sun produces ozone.
May I?
Well, I'm asking you.
I will explain it if you just give me a moment.
Okay, I'm sorry.
There's a very thin layer. It's about the thickness of a pencil point, if it were brought down to the air in front of you, of ozone, which protects us from deadly ultraviolet radiation from the sun. The ozone is also produced by ultraviolet radiation, and there is a natural equilibrium between the production and the destruction of the ozone, so there's always roughly the same amount. Now, we've manufactured a molecule which goes by the DuPont brand name of Freon. More generally, it's called chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, which was designed for to be inert, not to pose any environmental problem. It's used as the working fluid in refrigerators and air conditioners, lots of other things, aerosol spray cans, and so on. Now, it survives precisely because it's inert everywhere down here. But when it's carried up to the ozone layer, it presides over the destruction of the ozone, letting more ultraviolet light in and posing a very serious danger. Now, the upper atmosphere, where the ozone lives, it circulates over the whole planet, and very quickly. The reason that the hole is, by the way, it's not only over the over Antarctica, but it's mainly over Antarctica, has to do with polar clouds, the Antarctic vortex, a special kind of circulation that occurs over the poles, and the transport I just talked about. But there is now very good evidence of lesser, but still significant damage over the North Pole and a thinning over northern mid-latitudes, including New York City. So there's no question it's dangerous, and the ultimate indicator that it really is serious is that the company that makes some $600 or $700 million a year off this, DuPont, has decided to phase it out because of the recognition of what a serious danger it is.
Well, thank you very much. I've been very appreciative of your time.
Well, Lydia,
and
your
I'll be
questions were
listening.
excellent, Lydia. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lydia, I
Yes?
thank you for participating, and remember, you can hear this broadcast tomorrow. You can hear yourself in conversation with Carl Sagan. Call all your friends and tell them, and you can sit back and enjoy the conversation.
And what time will that be?
It will broadcast at 9 p.m. Earth Day. That's tomorrow.
Okay.
All right?
Thanks so much.
Okay.
All right, bye.
Now, actually, I should have said it'll be broadcast today, but I was talking to Lydia when we recorded this program. Truth in Radio. Let's get to Herb, who has been patiently waiting on the line. Yes, Herb.
Yes, Carl Sagan is there?
Yeah.
I have a very simple question. It seems that since we all agree that the air, our environment, is being destroyed basically by the burning of fossil fuels, and if this is true, then why are the same people who are demonstrating for a cleaner air are also demonstrating against the use of nuclear fuels, which we all know happens to be the cleanest fuel available?
Okay, so now we're talking about what can we do about
Basically,
greenhouse
it's a
warming.
rhetorical question because I don't think we could do anything because all you have is idiots running around demonstrating against everything.
I don't agree at all, Herb. I think that that demonstrators play an extremely useful role in nudging obdurate, intransigent bureaucracies and industries into some degree of public responsibility. But let me try to answer your question. It's not that the burning of fossil fuels eats up the air or destroys the air. It's that it adds to the air very small amounts of molecules which absorb infrared radiation that the Earth is trying to radiate to space and act as a blanket warming the Earth. The whole amount of CO2 in the atmosphere is 0.03%. It's not a huge amount. Now, the primary sources of that carbon dioxide are coal, oil, natural gas, wood.
Fossil fuels.
Those are called fossil fuels, that's right. And of course, the global economy is based on fossil fuels, so any statement that there's something wrong with burning of fossil fuels is a very worrisome statement.
Yeah, but there are alternative fuels available.
That's what I'm coming to. And it's a worrisome statement to everybody, but especially to the coal, oil, gas, and auto industries that are primarily involved in generating the CO2.
They can convert to other fuels.
Now, what are the alternatives? One alternative that you propose is nuclear fission power, the kind of power plants that we have today, of which the most famous are probably 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl.
And Shoreham.
And they're famous because
And Shoreham.
serious accidents that that happened or almost happened in those two places. The trouble with nuclear power plants is not that they produce greenhouse gases. They don't. They're perfect in that respect. It's that they produce radioactive waste and that they have the danger of serious accidents and that the radioactive waste lasts thousands to tens of thousands of years, so that you're committing umpty-ump generations into the future to take care of this junk, this dangerous refuse that we've made. We're saddling the future with it. Now, you could argue, well, that's their lookout, but we just have to worry about the next generation or two. A more responsible position, from my point of view, is to find some economically competitive source of energy which does not put greenhouse gases in the air and doesn't produce radioactive waste. That's the obvious thing to do. And there are such technologies, either just on the verge or that could be developed. The most obvious and important of them is solar energy. Now, the United States had a serious solar energy research and development program in the 1970s. One of the first acts of the Reagan administration was to cut off almost all the money available
Speaking of cutting off, I'm going to cut
for
us
that
off
research.
for just a moment, and then we'll resume with Carl Sagan on Earth Day.
Yeah, maybe I can just finish the last one because it comes to the central issue of what to do about global warming. So one thing we can do is lots more research and development of alternative, non-polluting, non-radioactive waste-producing energy sources like solar power. Another is much more efficient use of the existing fossil fuels. There's no reason why we can't have 60-mile-per-gallon cars instead of the present 20. Third thing is massive reforestation because forests take CO2 out of the air. And another thing we should do, and which is essential, without which we'll never solve this problem, is handling the world population crisis, because the more people, the more CO2. So these are all serious changes. This is a long-term, worldwide, transgenerational issue, and a lot of thinking has to change if we're going to get out of this problem.
Yes, unfortunately, easier said than done, especially the last part. Herb, did you have another question?
Yeah, all the things that you mentioned, especially solar energy, is, it's very interesting and it would probably solve all our problems. The only thing is, I don't believe that it's gonna be around for in our future.
Why not?
Maybe our children, but I don't think for ours.
Why not?
Why? Because it's just not economical.
Well, how do you know that?
Well, if it was economical, we'd be using it.
No. You see, the way it works is, if there's no tax for the environmental damage produced by fossil fuels, then it's cheaper to do fossil fuels than to do solar power. But if you were to add a tax for the damage to the environment that we all share, that burning a lump of coal or putting a gallon of gas into your car does, then it would turn out that fossil fuels are more expensive, or at least no more expensive than, or no cheaper than solar energy. And if there were significant resources put into developing solar energy, which this government has refused to do, it would get a lot cheaper. So I don't agree that it won't happen in our lifetime. It will only not happen in our lifetime if we don't do anything to bring it about.
Thank you, Herb.
Okay.
And let's go to Bob, who's next on the line with Carl Sagan. Yes, Bob. Hello.
Yes, Mr. Grant. I have a question for Dr. Sagan.
Yes, Bob. Hi.
Well, it's an honor to speak to you, sir. I really enjoyed your PBS series where you modeled all time in the form of a 12-month calendar.
Yeah, Cosmos Television. Series.
Yeah. I was wondering, when the next thing you do, or in a book you might publish, couldn't you do what you did for time, but do it with distance and model to, say, something that's a relevant term to us, like a football field or a mile? I can think in terms of one exit to the next on the Long Island Expressway. But when you start to think of where is another galaxy, it's like, what is, light years are one thing, but when you think of thousands of light years, it becomes incomprehensible.
Yeah, absolutely. To make the unimaginable even remotely comprehensible is virtually impossible when we're talking about these things like light years. Okay, what do you think of his question?
I think it's a very good question, and there are lots of ways of doing that, and there are a few places in the Cosmos television series where we actually attempt to do that. By the way, it's available now in all 13 episodes in video cassette. But you see, the thing is that we grew up not knowing anything about astronomical distances, and so all our intuitive understandings about distance and time are very much common sense, Earth-grown, human-oriented. And then science comes along and reveals the way the universe is actually put together, these immense vistas of time, these awe-inspiring distances in space. And naturally we find it a little befuddling. And by the way, it's not just you. Everyone, scientists, not scientists, do that. But there are ways of dealing with that, and what you suggested is a very good one.
One other quick question, sir. Will the Hubble telescope that's going to go up into space someday, will that prove or disprove black holes? And do you have any jobs that will, any projects that are going to go on with it?
Well, I would say that most astronomers think there's no question about the existence of black holes. There still are some holdouts. And the Hubble Space Telescope, among many other things, is likely to shed considerable light on that problem, especially this most interesting prospect that there's a massive black hole at the center of every galaxy, including our own.
All right. Thank you, Bob.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Grant, and thank you, Dr. Sagan.
Thank you, Bob.
All right, let's go to Lalo, who's been patiently waiting on the line. Yes, Lalo?
Hello, Dr. Sagan.
Hi.
Billions and billions of greetings to you.
Thank you. I never said that. Johnny Carson said it, but in putting together the videotape version of the Cosmos series, I listened to the whole business, and I never once said it. But I'll be glad to say it now.
All right.
Billions and billions.
I wanted to speak about black holes.
Yeah.
Current hypotheses state that they are such a dense material that light cannot escape from it. But I want to picture a scenario. Have you ever seen a child blow a soap bubble? At first it glimmers, then it starts turning dull, and then little holes poke through and then bursts. Could not our universe be nothing more than a soap bubble that has been blown by a little child in a bigger universe, who in turn has been blown by another child in a bigger universe, etc., etc.?
Well, this is an infinite regression. And there are many ideas of this sort, including in Hindu cosmology. And in fact, in Cosmos, I explicitly, won't have time here to talk about it in detail, but I explicitly talk about just such an idea, not soap bubbles, because our universe is not made of soap.
Exactly.
But the idea of an infinite hierarchy of matter in which the elementary particles of one universe are the entire universe of another, is an intriguing possibility, and also you'll recognize one that's very hard to prove or disprove.
Lalo, thank you. I think we have time for one more call. Let's go to Tim. Jim. Hello, Jim.
Yes. Hello, Bob. Hello, Dr. Sagan.
Hi, Jim.
It's a real pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks.
The reason I'm calling you is I want to ask about the Cosmos series.
Yep.
If you remember, billions and billions and billions of years ago, you had a series on the public stations. I was just wondering if they had plans to re-air them.
Yeah, the series is, as I was just saying, is now out in stores on video cassette, all 13 episodes plus a 14th, and it will be shown with some new material, probably beginning this fall on the Turner network, Turner Broadcasting
Okay.
System.
Well, I'm going to have to make plans to get that because that was a fantastic series.
Thank
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for calling. As you can see, Dr. Sagan, there is, whether we mention it or not, there is, I think, a very healthy interest on the part of most of us in the planets beyond, in the universe in which we live. And I'm sure you're aware of that. What do you foresee in the first quarter of the 21st century? Will there be a landing on Mars?
Of human beings. We've of course landed there with robots.
Right.
I think there is an excellent chance. The Planetary Society, which is a Pasadena-based public membership organization that I'm president of, has been calling for the last 5 years for a joint U.S.-Soviet effort to send human beings to explore Mars. And that suggestion was quickly embraced by Mr. Gorbachev, and only recently been embraced by the United States. But Mr. Bush has called for such a for a human mission to Mars, and B, lately for talking about doing it with the Soviets and other nations. So
Dr. Sagan,
I think that's going to come off.
I want to thank you. Thank you so much for your time. It's all been very edifying for all of us. And we'll be back with a closing word in just a moment. The world is going through turbulent times. The winds of change are everywhere. Conditions that prevailed yesterday will alter today and be different tomorrow. Some for the better, some not. And for many Americans, there's a sense of loss of that golden era when the basic values in life remain steady, day after day, year after year. Respect, caring, pride. When American industry produced a superior product or service that you took for granted. The customers of Boston Post Lumber in the Bronx know what I'm talking about. Day after day, year after year, they receive quality lumber and construction supplies, budget priced right on the money, and service the way it was in that golden era. So if you're a Donald Trump, a suburban builder, or a do-it-yourselfer with a taste for the better life, call Alex, Sam, John, or Jerry. Boston Post Lumber at 2750 Boston Road in the Bronx. Call 212-547-7800, 212-547-7800.
I'm standing here next to a beautiful 1990 Oldsmobile Cutlass Sierra. The Cutlass Sierra has always been one of the good old guy's most popular models, but now that it's possible to get one for just... They've really been going fast. Enjoy the car! The great thing about the Cutlass Sierra is that it's a real 6-passenger car, unlike the Honda Accord or the Toyota Camry. And when you have one with air conditioning, AM, FM stereo, and automatic transmission for just Well, no wonder they're moving so fast. Hey, drive carefully. Oh, and another thing. You also get the good old guy roadside assistance program and bumper-to-bumper plus warranty. Lease a 6-passenger Cutlass Sierra for an incredibly... But hurry, they're going fast. Hey, they don't call us good old guys for nothing.
See the new generation. That's your good old guy.
Get your participating dealer at a quiet moment for the low monthly payment at full details.
This week only, save on the hottest home light grass trimmer around. A.W. Meyer Company offering the ST-155 at $92.99, regularly $126.99. Includes a free value pack, string, shoulder strap, and oil. A.W. Meyer Company with the most knowledgeable salespeople since 1929, offering you home light's best grass trimmer for $92.99 till Saturday only. Stop by today on the Ridgefield Circle in Ridgefield, New Jersey. 201-945-5500. Call now and save, accepting Visa and MasterCard and shipping anywhere.
Only one tire store installs more kinds of tires on more cars than anyone else. Sears. We're on sale through April 28th. The Road Handler Response all-season steel-belted radio with a 50,000-mile warranty is as low as $29.99 for the P155 ADR13. Check your Sears store for details and ask about convenient 7-day-a-week service. Stop at Sears and stop with confidence. That's your money's worth and a whole lot more.
I hate people.
Earth Day!
I lose.
Earth Day! WABC, New York.
It's 10 o'clock.
From ABC News, I'm Bob Walker. Lithuania's president says he could visualize a moratorium on full independence if that would bring Moscow to the negotiating table. But Vytautas Landsbergis tells the New York Times Lithuania would never go back to being governed under the Soviet Constitution. ABC's Juris Kaja in Stockholm tells us what he hears from Lithuania.
A telephone report from Vilnius said the Soviet Union is apparently blocking some food shipments to Lithuania. A volunteer spokesman for the Lithuanian parliament said Deputy Prime Minister Romualdas Ozolas said 2 ships with sugar from Cuba and an overland shipment of fish from Latvia had been turned away from Lithuania. The spokesman said Ozolas was not concerned because Lithuania is self-sufficient in most essential foods.
President Bush is to meet with congressional leaders early next week and may announce some steps against the Soviet Union because of the economic sanctions. I'll have more news after this.
I'm calling you to talk about Kelly Temporary Services.
Fine.
Are you happy with Kelly?
Yes, extremely happy with the service Kelly provides.
What if I asked you to switch services?
I don't know what I would do if I weren't able to call on them. I depend on them a lot.
What if I guaranteed you double your money back if you weren't absolutely, totally happy?
It wouldn't matter. The service is of more value to me than double the money back.
Good value.
Extremely good value.
Kelly Temporary Services, the first and the best.
Kelly is worth it.
Now, when you buy 2 B.F. Goodrich TA tires, you'll also get a free NCAA Final Four commemorative basketball. Buy 4 tires and get a free NCAA sports bag and hat with the basketball. And that's not all. See your participating B.F. Goodrich TA tire dealer for other exciting NCAA tournament offers. B.F. Goodrich TA tires, the athletic shoes for your car.
B.F. Goodrich TA tires.
Offer ends April 30th. Shipping and handling on merchandise additional.
Earth Day 1990 officially is tomorrow, but activities have been going on all week. The official opening for the festivities took place in Washington, where American Indian tribal leaders said a prayer to Mother Earth. The Assistant Administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency, William Rosenberg, says he's looking for a huge turnout.
There probably will be 200 million people.